It's already episode 3 here in 2024 of the Tech Ed Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. As you know, we exist to secure the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. This is truly a mission driven podcast. And for that reason, the more people we can welcome into the Tech Ed Podcast family, the better. We thank you so much for listening every week, but please share the information about this podcast with your friends, with your family, with your students, with other members of your institution, so that we can continue to drive our mission forward. If you can leave a review right on Apple or Spotify, if that's where you get our podcast, that would be fantastic. And if you're not already subscribed to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or on another platform, please do so. The 5-star reviews that we get, assuming you love our show, continue to build our mission and continue to build technical education here in the United States and around the globe. Now, on to this week's episode. Welcome to this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. My name is Matt Kirkner. I am your host this week and every single week, where we bring a brand new guest on to talk about incredible things going on in STEM and technical education. Today's episode is exactly that, talking about something we haven't spent a lot of time on here on the Tech Ed Podcast in the past. We are going to talk about mining. We are going to talk about the mineral industry. We are going to talk about how that industry is advancing and innovating in many of the same ways that we see in spaces like precision agriculture and manufacturing and hospitality and retail, and in every single market space within our economy. Our guest this week runs a phenomenal institution of higher education in the state of South Dakota. It's called the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. That institution's leader is Dr. Jim Rankin. He is the president of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. Dr. Rankin, thank you so much for joining us.
Matt, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to it.
Yeah, we look forward to having a really interesting conversation and learning a ton about your incredible institution. They may be surprised to know that it's actually one of the nation's leading STEM universities. And in this incredibly fully STEM focused curriculum that you have, students can jump right into their major from day one, which, as many people know, can be really unique in the world of higher education. And I love this. You're expected as a student at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology to, quote, break things, build things, and invent tomorrow. I love that saying. So tell us a little bit about the STEM focused mindset that you have there at the university.
We have completely STEM. We have a couple, two STEM related. One is like a business management, but everything else is engineering and science. And it's a great program. We have 20 different undergraduate programs that you can take. We have 14 doctoral programs in engineering and science, so you can get the full gamut of bachelor's, master's, or PhD in engineering and science. And so we're a fairly small institution. We're about 2,500 students. An interesting point that you may find is that less than half of our students are from South Dakota. Most of our students are from out of state, and it just shows what a good deal we have. Yeah, one of our bragging points is for about the last 4 years, we've been the #1 return on investment university in the nation, and we're very proud of that. We are reasonably priced, and the career that you're going to have when you graduate is just fantastic.
Well, and I think that's a really interesting distinction to make, especially as we look at changing attitudes across the country around higher education, understanding the value of a bachelor's degree, for instance, and making sure that whatever that ROI on the back end is there to support what that student invested in their learning opportunity. I'm just a huge believer that as we look forward to the next decade, that model is going to become more and more important as we have more modes of delivery, we have more options for students, we have more career opportunities, and I think we have better data to really understand if I'm making a significant investment in higher education, what is the payback on that going to be? And what is my life going to look like when I'm done? And is that going to be worth it? So keeping costs low, understanding how to focus on, in your case, these STEM career pathways and 20 different undergraduate degrees, 14 PhD opportunities or doctorate degrees for students. Very, very interesting way to look at the future of higher education from an investment standpoint. I've got to believe that being the best return on investment for higher education in the country has got to attract a ton of students. And clearly, from the fact that you're dragging or pulling students, I should say, into the state of South Dakota. I love your beautiful state, as we were talking about a moment ago. Absolutely fascinating the way that you've set that organization up and the incredible career pathways I've got to believe that you're putting your students on. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But before we get to that, Dr. Rankin, your history in mining, I think, in a lot of ways is unique. There aren't a lot of institutions of higher education with that word mining right in the
Sure.
name. So tell us about the original focus of the university when it first started.
Yeah, the gold was found in the Black Hills of South Dakota in about the 1870s, and our university, our college, after school, was actually founded in 1885, and so the university was really featured in terms of the mining activity. In fact, it's an interesting fact that the South Dakota State Constitution says one university in South Dakota has to teach mining and metallurgy, and that comes to us. So that's interesting that we're actually in the Constitution that way. Yeah, we call them the mineral industries, and so there are only four universities in the nation right now that teach the four: mining engineering, metallurgical engineering, geological engineering, and geology. And so, and those are great fields. The students that come into those fields just have fantastic careers. And so, and I think a lot of students, prospective students, don't realize the opportunities in those majors.
I would certainly agree that you think about the mining technology in general, and I would guess that probably a vast array of students across the country that are maybe going through their K-12 pathway don't necessarily understand the great career opportunities available in that space. I want to talk a little bit more about the history of the institution, again going all the way back to the 1880s, as you suggest. Tell us a little bit about how that history and how that focus impacts and affects the focus of the degree programs.
Yeah, I mean, we start out with those mineral industries programs, but then you add things like mechanical engineering and electrical engineering, chemical engineering, chemistry. And so you find that it's not just those four programs that go into the mineral industries or the mining, but it spreads out across almost everything we have on campus. And then as you find other industries growing, it allows us to look for other programs as we get into aviation, as we get into transportation, just as more industries pop up in South Dakota and across the nation, we find that there's an area for us to help educate students.
So if you think about those industry spaces, whether it's mining, whether it's the mineral industries, whether it's transportation, whether it's aviation, all of those areas are advancing at warp speed across the entire economy and will continue to do so. Obviously, with an organization that goes back, as you mentioned, to the 1880s, you weren't there back in the 1880s, but you were a student of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology at one time. So I would be interested, Dr. Rankin, now you're leading that organization, but talk a little bit about what attracted you there in the first place to study, and then what brought you back to lead that institution.
It's interesting is that as a high school student, I had teachers that were very interested in chemistry and very interested in science and very interested in math. And we hold a West River math contest here on campus. And so I would come out here to participate in the contest, or the regional science fair is held on the Mines campus. And so I would come out and participate in that. So I had a lot of familiarity with the campus, and I'm really liking math. If you like math and that's an area of interest, then an engineering and science school is just a great place for you. So it was a good fit.
Absolutely, and then you end up coming back to run the institution. So tell us about that opportunity.
It's an interesting piece, and it fits into a lot of what I look at. Is that when I graduated with an electrical engineering degree, there were really not many jobs in South Dakota to be able to stay here. And so I went to work in Iowa for industry for about 11 years before I jumped into academics. So I was at St. Cloud State in Minnesota for about 8 years. I was at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio for a while, University of Arkansas, and kept moving up. I was the VP of research at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville when the presidency opened back up. And it gave me an opportunity to come back to South Dakota and come back to my alma mater, which I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Sounds like you have an absolutely great opportunity. You and I have crossed over. I'm maybe not necessarily at the same time, but I had a manufacturing company for a number of years. We had a plant in Eldridge, Iowa, actually on the eastern end near the Quad Cities, actually part of the Quad Cities in the state of Iowa. So I know that state really, really well. One of the things that was fascinating to me during all those years that I had in industry was just to see how market spaces evolve with technology. And we live in this amazing era where technologies are advancing at warp speed. We talk about the exponential economy, products doubling in price performance every 12 to 18 months. I know exactly what that is doing to the industrial economy because of all my experience in manufacturing. I have to admit, I know less about what that's doing to the mining industry, but I've got to believe that the same advancements that we're seeing in the manufacturing space, things like autonomous mobile robots and robotics and data acquisition, smart sensors and smart devices are having their impact in the mining and the mineral industry as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's we had just gone to the legislature in South Dakota to get money for a brand new mineral industries building called the New Core Mineral Industries Building, and so we've had to do a lot of talking about the mining industries. And as we like to say, that everything you have, if you didn't grow it, you had to mine it. And so mining is important. Almost everything in your house came from something related to mining. And it's not your grandfather's mine anymore. It's self-driving trucks, automation. It's just a whole new world of technology that you're seeing. So we need to make sure that we're moving forward. I think the other piece that we try to talk about, yes, I have degrees in mining engineering, but we also have degrees in environmental engineering, environmental science. So we want to make sure that when we're mining, that we're putting the land back to the way it was when we're done. So it's very important that we're looking at remediation as well.
As we look at just the vast array of natural resources that we have here in the United States, I think sometimes people underestimate as we look to other parts of the globe for the types of materials that we need to make things. We have tremendous resources right here in our own country. I was with the former Fortune 500 executive of a mining company about a year ago, and he was just sharing with me the incredible resources we have here, and if we could just find a way to get at them, both in terms of technology and in terms of public policy. And I think that you mentioning the environmental aspect of mining, really, really important aspect of what we do to make sure that as we are extracting whatever it is we're extracting from the earth, we're doing it in a fashion that is mindful of the environment. I have a good friend, Ron Wanek, who's the chairman and founder of Ashley Furniture Industries. And I've heard Ron talk about, here in the United States and around the globe, there's only really a handful of ways that we can create true wealth. We grow it using agriculture, we can manufacture it in manufacturing, we can build it, meaning construction, or we can mine it, which means taking advantage of those incredible resources that we have here in the United States and around the globe. And as technology advances and we can find ways to do that in a more environmentally responsible way, I think teaching not just the mining technology but also the environmental aspects of what it is that you do, really, really important as that technology continues to advance. I know you've got your eye on those advancements in that space, in that technology space. And one of the answers to the changing role of technology in mining and in mineral industries and elsewhere is the mining hub, which you've created as an incubator
Yeah.
for really so many of the technologies that we're talking about. This sounds really, really cool. And I'd love for you to tell our audience a little bit more about that.
Yeah, our mining hub was really an initiative that we started with Caterpillar. Caterpillar's got a Mine Star initiative that they work with us on, and it's how do we take a look at improving what's going on in the mining industry. So it's like I say, self-driving trucks, it's remote controlled trucks. All the technologies are being advanced. So we're working with them on what we can do to improve the underground mining aspect of what goes on. But a real interesting part of that is the mining hub, which is it's almost like a consortium. It's actually built off the National Science Foundation's Industry University Research Consortium model, where we have industries that partner in. Some of them look like competitors, some of them look like supply chain manufacturers, but we all want to work together to define what the problems are that will tell us the future of mining and mining technology. And so it's our students working together, it's our faculty working together with industries. And I think it's interesting also, it's not just the mineral industries, it's electrical engineering, it's computer science, it's chemical engineering and mechanical engineering. Almost everybody on campus is involved in this mining hub.
And I've got to believe that really all of those different technologies are converging, and it's really kind of happening all over the economy. That it's no longer where we have our one career pathway or our one space. And in manufacturing, we see for instance the IT/OT convergence, where operations people are having to or getting, I guess, to work directly with folks in the world of information technology. Those used to be totally separate departments, two totally separate divisions in a lot of manufacturing companies. Now they're starting to converge, and you're seeing, I'm sure, the same thing in the mineral industries and in mining when we look at converging technologies like smart sensors, like smart devices, like autonomous vehicles. It's just some of the examples that you mentioned. I also can't help but kind of reflect on the alignment there with things like precision agriculture, where we're using those same technologies now to grow our food, that we're using to do so many other things across our economy. And it sounds like the mining industry and mineral industry is no exception to that, creating this really great consortium among a lot of different organizations and a lot of different disciplines. I know is going to serve you well. You mentioned in that last answer your relationship with Caterpillar and the Cat Labs MineStar Consortium, and I know that that is a huge component of the mining hub. Tell us a little bit about what that is, and also just kind of share with us how important Caterpillar's support of the university is to you.
Caterpillar has been engaged with the university for quite a bit of time. In fact, were located in one of our buildings for a while. They expanded out, went into one of the local incubators, and now they've got more than 100 employees located in Rapid City that work closely with us. And so we're really appreciative of that. And, one of the things we've got just up the road about 50 miles in Lead, South Dakota is the old Homestake Gold Mine, which has actually been turned into the Sanford Underground Research Facility that does work in neutrinos and dark matter, really a high level physics at the 4,850 foot level underneath. But Caterpillar's now got a mining demonstration at the 1750 level. And so they're able to show off some of their underground equipment at that level. And so our faculty and students get a chance to work with them on some of these new developments. So it's really been a important part of what we're doing here at the university.
Well, and when you start thinking about things like neutrinos and dark matter, and you get my quantum physics fascination and those juices flowing, I mean, it really starts to show. To your earlier point, it's not your grandfather's mining industry or mineral industry anymore. That things are really really advancing, and so we could probably do an entire episode just talking about the quantum physics aspect of the work that you're doing. Probably save that for another time, but it really features and focuses the incredibly advanced technologies that so often you're working on. I was Dr. Rankin at a meeting about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I guess, in Detroit, Michigan. And this was a convergence of all kinds of employers in the electric vehicle space, for instance. So we had Tesla, we had Nissan, we had Stellantis, we had the United Auto Workers, we had BASF was there, all kinds of tier one and tier two suppliers to the automotive industry. Ford was there as well. As we're thinking about advancements in that technology and advancements in electric vehicles, and we're talking about just the incredible amount of rare earth minerals, of mining assets, if you will, that we're using to build electric vehicles and to build also IC chips. And we think about the investment we're making here in the chips industry and in semiconductors and so on here in the United States. All of these require rare earth minerals. And so I would love to hear from you a little bit about how you're aligning with some of those changes in other market spaces when it comes to how we make sure we have the materials to be successful in those spaces.
Yeah, there was a presidential executive order put out a couple of years ago that just talked about, I think it was 34 or 35 minerals that we really don't have access or we don't mine in the United States. They're controlled by other foreign interests, which really is a national security issue. We need access to those minerals, not only for defense, but for our economy. And so we've got to find ways to make sure we have access to those minerals. We do have them in the United States. It's just that we don't really mine them much anymore. And so we've got to start mining those and learning how to turn them into something useful, the metallurgy part of it. How do we make a product out of them? And so we just need to keep moving that direction. A lot of it is the permitting. I think permitting takes so long nowadays that we've got to find a way to do that because it really is a national security issue that we could solve. We really wouldn't have to be in the position we're in.
I agree with you 100%. You look at the way the United States is situated geographically with oceans on both sides. We have incredibly strong capital markets. I mean, there's just so many things that we have going for us. And all of these natural benefits that we have as well, all the natural resources that we have available to us. I think sometimes Americans actually sell themselves a little short in terms of all of the great things that we have here in the United States of America. Obviously, we have to, if there's, 34 or 35 minerals that are absolutely critical to the future of our economy, as you suggest, and we have those right here in the US. Yes, we have to mine them safely. Yes, we have to do it in a way that has minimal environmental impact, but we also have to think about the national security aspects of this and making sure that we are not losing ground, to other countries, to other regions, just because of the permitting and public policy as it relates to some of these aspects of growing our economy. So I think you make some really really interesting points. As again, we kind of point to the future of the United States and the incredible opportunities that we have available to us. We also think about research and we think about advancing technologies, and in as much as you've got, I believe, 14 doctoral programs and doing a ton of research in all kinds of different aspects of technology, talk a little bit about the institution's position from a research standpoint and some of the work that you're doing.
To me, it's very important that we do research. As I mentioned, when I graduated, I had to leave because there weren't really jobs. So we need to be an economic engine for South Dakota. And so that means that we're doing research, but research is the beginning of the pipeline. It's research, it's innovation, it's patent, it's a license, it's a startup company, it's more jobs located in South Dakota. And so we really work hard on that. I think, as a small institution with 150 faculty, I think we had 17 patents awarded last year, and we average about one invention disclosure per $1 million of funded research, which is about twice as frequently as the national average is for universities. So we put a lot of emphasis on that, and we have a strong entrepreneurship program for students and faculty that may want to start a company located here. And it's kind of interesting. We do have a strong entrepreneur in residence program, but it's a little bit of a misnomer because we've got 50 of them, but hardly any of them are around the campus. They're located nationally, and then they work with our students either remotely or they come back to campus to visit. But that's really, I think, a key to our success in that area.
Tell us a little bit more about that, the Entrepreneur in Residence program. That sounds fascinating. So you've got 50 individuals all over the United States that are aligned with the university as they are exploring opportunities in entrepreneurship. How does that work?
We have like 3 or 4 different programs as we go through the year to start out to show the students what an entrepreneur does. We have some business plan competitions early on. We provide some funding. And then there's a governor's business plan competition every year. And I think of the last 10 years, our students have won 8 times the first place trophy in that. And so we really pride ourselves in that entrepreneurship, but it's all based on folks who have worked at Dow or Shell or startup companies or Expedia that have come back. As just an example, I can't even name all the companies, but they come back because they want to see our students succeed and get into becoming entrepreneurs and starting companies. So it's just a fantastic program. It's always so much fun when they all come back to campus.
Can imagine. Entrepreneurship is such a great opportunity for our young people. And in so many cases, I mean, people want to own companies, they want to invent new products, they want to lead industries, but they don't necessarily understand the path to get there. And I think a program like the one you describe it does exactly that. It creates a roadmap for students to understand technology, to understand business, to understand their future in terms of business ownership and innovation. Really really important work. To think about the fact that you've got an institution of 2,500 students, and you're earning and getting approved 17 patents every single year. Talking about the governor's competition that you mentioned, winning that 8 out of 10 years, really kind of speaks to the fact that for a small to mid-sized institution of higher education, you're doing some really really big things. You already mentioned one of those things, which is the relationship with the Sanford Underground Research Facility, and you're located from a geographical perspective right alongside that operation. You're also really really close, as I understand, to Ellsworth Air Force Base. So you're in this booming high tech region, and in so many ways, how does that location influence some of the research that your students are doing?
If I talk about SURF, the Sanford Underground Research Facility, we've got students from physics and electrical engineering and mining engineering, and there's probably 7 or 8 departments that have research going on up at SURF. And if you ever have a chance to visit, you would be down 48, 50 level. You would think you're in a lab on the surface. You wouldn't even realize you were down underground, except for the elevator ride. That's probably the only key you would know. And then, we've got Ellsworth Air Force Base here, We've been very engaged with something called the National Security Innovation Network. It's a way for universities to connect with the Department of Defense. They find problems they need solved, and our students go work on it. Or we take the research we do here and we find a defense facility that might be able to use it. And so that's put probably 15 or 16 student projects out at Ellsworth in the last year, solving everything from security issues to database issues to tracking purchasing. It really is a strong program, and I can't talk about National Security Innovation Network or INSIN enough.
What a great opportunity for your students. Now I just have to go back to, you said 40 to 50 levels underground at surf. Is that right?
Yeah, there. I think the original mine went down about 8,000 feet. The physics labs are at the 4,850 foot level.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, you think about I mean, I'm just trying to imagine a mountain. I mean, that can be a small mountain, right? 4,000 feet above the surface of the earth, and you're talking about being, 4 or 5 thousand feet below the surface of the earth, doing this research. What a cool opportunity that is for your students. Is that open to the public? You said if you ever get a chance to research it, is that a place that our listeners could go?
Actually, there's a outstanding visitor center right there that gives a fantastic overview of what goes on. It's a little tougher to actually get in. Usually got to have a connection with a group or something, but occasionally there are some folks that get a chance to go down in there. So
And as you know, I get through South Dakota quite regularly, having both business interests and family there. So when you say you need a connection, is it like a connection to, say, the president of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology? Might that help, perhaps?
I wouldn't guarantee it, but you never know.
Fair enough, fair enough. So you've mentioned, I mean, certainly that organization and the Sanford name is ubiquitous across South Dakota, of course, and well familiar both in, in healthcare and in finance and in so many other aspects of your state's economy that the Sanford family is really, really endemic in the entire state. You also have great partners. You mentioned Caterpillar, you mentioned Nucor, but we start to look at the employers that you're aligned with, companies like Amazon, Cargill, Collins Aerospace, Garmin, Microsoft, the U.S. Navy. That we've talked a little bit about your relationship with the DoD. What makes your students so highly sought after for these companies as they're looking for employees? What is it that makes your students unique, and why they're in such high demand?
I think a lot of it is, the work ethic. They know that it's a challenging program, that you've had to work hard to get through it. Almost every class we have has got a hands-on lab, so you're actually doing things in the lab. It's not just a book learning; you're actually going more than that. And one metric of success is we have career fairs, one in the fall, one in the spring. Our fall career fair this last year, we had 220 companies that actually came to campus and spent 1, 2, or 3 days. In fact, we don't have any more room. We've completely filled every gym and location we have, but they know what they're going to get. And then not only are they hiring our students for employees, but they're hiring them for internships. I think 77% of our students have done an internship before they graduate, and they're paid internships, and so you're getting a chance to earn about an average of $22 an hour during the summer working at a company. And we encourage our freshmen right from the beginning, go to the career fair. You need to learn how this is played and how you find out getting a job. And we put a lot of emphasis on that. Our placement rate is 98%, and that's 98% in your discipline. If you go to work at a coffee shop or something like that, that doesn't count.
Right.
So it's 98% in your discipline.
That's incredible. I mean, you think about, first of all, just doing the quick math in my head, 2,500 students, and you have 220 companies that show up for a career fair. Doing the quick math again, 2,500 students, you're graduating about, 625 students a year. So you literally have like, three students per company that shows up at your career fair that would be, at least in the position to graduate, for instance, from undergrad and move on into whatever comes after. And that's not even including your graduate and your doctorate students as well. So just an incredible ratio and an incredible high interest in the students that are coming. I think a couple things that I want to emphasize out of that last answer. The first one is that the huge importance of STEM career choices, and we, as many students as we can get to choose STEM as their career choice. The jobs are there waiting for them. They're interesting jobs. They're well-paying jobs. They're jobs that are in high demand and that you can advance quickly through. So it's just a great career choice as our young people are thinking about, what might come after high school for them. And then the other thing is the focus on internships and great paying internships. I always talk about the fact that during my time as a student. I learned as much, honestly, in the work that I did. And I had some really cool jobs and internships as I was going through college as I did in the classroom. And not that the classwork and the homework wasn't important, but learning how to apply what I was understanding from my coursework while I was going through the university became really, really valuable to me. And I think accelerated my career when I was done because I had already worked in an environment. I knew the rules of work. I knew how to act in a work environment, in a professional environment. Great, great example of how your students are getting that experience as they're going through their education pathway, and is evidenced by the huge demand for those students once they're done.
I would actually jump in and just say that for a company that's looking to start hiring engineers and scientists, you need to be hiring interns because we find that a lot of our interns come back after their junior year. They've already got a job for when they graduate. And so if you want the best students, you better be in the intern program because otherwise you're missing out to those other companies.
Whoever provided those internships for them, they're the ones that are going to be first in line for that individual student. So really kind of underscores the importance of being involved on an ongoing basis, providing internships for students. When we hired interns in our manufacturing companies, yeah, we would bring these interns in. The goal was to impart our knowledge to them and to share with them, what it's like to work in an organization, what our career is like, give them really cool projects that can inspire them toward what came after. I think we have a little bit of a change going on in the world of internships in that we're now bringing interns into our businesses that know more about certain technologies than our employees do. And they're learning things about artificial intelligence, about smart sensors, about data acquisition and data analytics as they're going through their education pathway. We're now learning from the interns. So it's as much about imparting our knowledge and experience to that young person in many cases as it is about benefiting from their incredible knowledge. Are you seeing the same thing?
Oh, definitely. And I think because we're coming out with different degree programs that you're getting a good base knowledge, but you're also learning about some of the new things. So like one of our new PhDs is in data science and data analytics. Very important. You're going to see a lot of demand for that as you go forward. But I think the other interesting part for an intern, you bring an intern in and you assign them a problem. They don't know what they can't do. And if you've been in the company for 5 years, well, we can't do it that way. But that intern doesn't know that, and sometimes you're amazed at what they come up with for a solution.
I'm laughing as you say that because we talk about that in one of our technology companies all the time. Is that they don't have any limits, and so you could walk into an experienced engineer's office and say, here, let's do this, and let's see if we can't get it done by the end of summer. You get kind of that look, right? And not that they're necessarily doing anything wrong or that they're not amazing in their own way, but now they have limits. Maybe they failed a couple times and they're like, well, I don't know if that's even possible. You give that project to a young person, they don't have any idea. They have no idea that that's an unreasonable expectation, and so they just give everything that they have, and it is amazing the results they can produce. I'm really glad you made that comment because I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what we see through internships. Did you have an internship of sorts as you were kind of going through your education pathway and work experience?
It's interesting. There were some internships when I went through. I graduated in '78, and I was offered an internship with a mining company in Michigan, and I couldn't figure out as an electrical why I'd want to go to a mining company. Obviously, I wasn't so smart back when I was in college because I probably should have took it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you never know. Although I've got to tell you where your career has led you, leading just this amazing institution. And I'm sure you wouldn't have it any other way in terms of the great opportunity you have to inspire the next generation of STEM talent to innovate in the education space, to do it in an institution that one of the things I love about running small companies is that we can be really nimble. I've got to believe, is that the same kind of thing you see in running a smaller institution of higher education, is that you can pivot more quickly and make change in a more, I guess, with a more intentional and fast paced approach.
You can to an extent, but at the same time, we're all ABET accredited for all of our engineering programs. So you've got to make sure you follow accreditation. And then we have a board of regents that governs all 6 public institutions in South Dakota. So you've got to make sure you're following the policies and procedures there. And so you don't have quite as much flexibility in some of those areas, but you still get a chance to go off and try new things, which is great.
Absolutely. And trying new things is the way that we innovate. You've obviously got a great experience and a great background in innovating education, and not just in the past, but as we look to the future, really exciting to see where the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology takes itself in the next 5 to 10 years. Rather than looking 5 to 10 years ahead, though, we're going to look back a ways. So if we were able to go back and we think about that 15-year-old Jim Rankin, and give that young person one piece of advice, Dr. Rankin, what would that be?
It's interesting. When I came to School of Mines, I had no idea what an engineer did. I just knew I wanted to do something with math, and that's the way I was going to start out. And I see that even today. There's a lot of students that know what mechanical engineering is. I think 25% of our body are mechanical engineers. It would have been nice to have understood what all the degrees were and what all the career fields were before I got started. And if you're a student who doesn't have a major when you come here, we actually have you take a sample course that looks at every discipline. And it probably, if I would have had that knowledge that, hey, take a look at everything before you pick one major, that might have been a better way to look at it.
I want to make sure that our young people who are considering STEM careers hear that answer loud and clear. I advise a number of universities across the Midwest in a number of different capacities. In one case, I work with the manufacturing engineering program at one of the universities in the state of Wisconsin. And we talk about the huge number of students that choose, for instance, electrical or mechanical engineering out of high school because that's maybe what they're familiar with, or somebody told them that'll give them the most options as they're going through their education pathway or once they graduate, or maybe they have a neighbor or a parent who's in one of those disciplines. And then you get into the university and you think about, degree programs like industrial technology, manufacturing technology, mining technology, chemical engineering, biomedical engineering. I mean, all of these different engineering disciplines, each with their own kind of flavor. And while we're still dealing with math and we're still dealing with physics and we're still dealing with a lot of those STEM disciplines, applying those in really different ways that have hugely different impacts on different spaces in the economy, really, really important. So I think that's just phenomenal advice to our young people who are thinking about a STEM career pathway, thinking about engineering. Take some time to understand the disciplines. Take some time to think about really what you love to do, what your interests are, what you excelled at while you were going through your secondary education pathway. And it's okay to choose something other than mechanical or electrical, although those are great choices as well. Be open to what the other options are. I really appreciate that response. I also appreciate the time that you took with us here, Dr. Jim Rankin, on the Tech Ed podcast, learning about the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. Really, really amazing things that you're doing. We learned about some different market spaces, some different technologies, how the IIoT and Industry 4.0 technologies are impacting mining and the mineral industry. It's been a really fascinating conversation with you, and I can't thank you enough for taking some time.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
I don't know about you, but I learned so much on this episode of the Tech Ed podcast. Who knew about all of these technologies affecting the mining and mineral industries? I feel like I have a much better understanding of that space in our economy, and I hope you do as well. To get the show notes, head on over to techedpodcast.com/Rankin, Rankin. You'll find everything about this week's episode right there. Don't forget, we spent all kinds of time on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. So if you love what you hear on the Tech Ed podcast, please find us there where we feature insights and great content for every new episode. Find us on your favorite social platform and say hello. We would love to connect. New episodes release every single Tuesday. See you next week.